It's a feeling of being a ghost in your own body. Your thoughts feel distant, and your reflection in the mirror seems like a stranger. This isn't just poetic description. It's a neurological event. Your sense of a unified self is actively constructed by a network of brain regions called the default mode network, or DMN. This network is responsible for your inner monologue, for remembering your past and imagining your future. When you haven't slept, the precise, synchronized firing between key hubs of the DMN, like the posterior cingulate cortex and the medial prefrontal cortex, begins to break down. It's like an orchestra where every instrument starts playing at a slightly different tempo. The result is a fractured sense of self, a feeling known as depersonalization, where you are no longer the protagonist of your own life, but merely an observer. This fractured self exists within a fractured timeline. Moments seem to drag on for an eternity, only to be followed by hours that disappear in a blink. This temporal distortion stems from the thalamus, the brain's central relay station for nearly all incoming sensory information. Think of it as a gatekeeper, deciding what data is important enough to reach your conscious awareness. Sleep deprivation causes this gatekeeper to abandon its post. A flood of unfiltered, chaotic sensory information bombards the cortex. Your brain's internal clock, which relies on the steady processing of sequential events, is completely overwhelmed by this noise. Time perception isn't a passive sense, it's an active calculation. When the data for that calculation is corrupted, time itself feels broken. Into this storm of sensory chaos walks a brain with no emotional brakes. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain right behind your forehead, acts as the logical CEO, managing impulses and making rational decisions. It's a metabolically expensive region and one of the first to have its budget cut during sleep deprivation. At the same time, the amygdala, your brain's ancient and powerful fear and emotion generator, becomes hyperactive. The normal communication link between the rational prefrontal cortex and the emotional amygdala is effectively severed. So when a minor annoyance occurs, the amygdala screams catastrophe, and the prefrontal cortex, sluggish and underpowered, can't step in to say it's just a spilled coffee. You are left with a hair-trigger emotional response. Not because you're weak-willed, but because the neurological hardware for emotional regulation has been taken offline. It gets stranger than just feeling differently. Parts of your brain can be asleep while you are awake. This isn't microsleep, where your entire brain briefly shuts down. This is local sleep. Individual columns of neurons, exhausted from overuse, can enter a sleep-like state of inactivity even while surrounding neurons are firing normally. Imagine you're trying to type a sentence, but the specific neurons responsible for controlling your left index finger decide to take a nap. Suddenly, you make a typo. You might trip on a flat surface because a small population of neurons in your motor cortex was momentarily offline. These aren't just errors of fatigue. They are errors of localized non-existence. A part of your brain, for a fraction of a second, simply wasn't there to perform its duty. Beyond the electrical dysfunction, there is a physical problem: waste. All day long, your brain's 100 billion neurons produce metabolic byproducts as they work. The most famous of these is beta amyloid. To clear this waste, your brain uses a remarkable plumbing system called the glymphatic system. It uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush toxins out from the spaces between cells. Crucially, this system is up to 60% more effective during deep sleep, because your brain cells actually shrink to increase the space between them, allowing the fluid to flow freely. When you skip sleep, that waste remains. The brain fog you experience isn't a feeling. It's the physical reality of toxins gumming up the works, impairing the clean transmission of signals between your neurons. So, with a fragmented self, warped time, uncontrolled emotions, sleeping neurons, and a brain physically clogged with waste, what happens to reality itself? Your brain doesn't just passively receive reality, it actively constructs it based on predictions. It constantly guesses what's about to happen and uses your senses to correct any errors. Sleep deprivation cripples this predictive engine. The brain's ability to create a stable, top-down model of the world weakens. As this top-down control fails, random, bottom-up noise from your sensory organs gets misinterpreted. A flicker of shadow in your peripheral vision is no longer dismissed as noise. Instead, the exhausted brain might interpret it as a fleeting shape, a bug, or a face. You begin to experience the raw, unfiltered data of your senses without the sanity check of a well-maintained predictive model. You aren't just tired, you are witnessing the deconstruction of your own reality.
Monotony has grown fast. Nearly 2,700 people have watched in the last few weeks, yet less than 0.03% are subscribed. It would mean a lot if you joined by hitting subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.